Hello hockey fans, Oddman Rush here and welcome back to another video. The 2022 trade deadline saw the Florida Panthers make some pretty huge moves, as they acquired defenseman Ben Sherratt from the Montreal Canadiens, as well as forward Claude Giroux from the Philadelphia Flyers. By adding two of the biggest names at the deadline, and by mortgaging most of their future assets in order to do so, Florida has become even more dangerous than they already were, and have solidified themselves as a legitimate championship contender for the upcoming Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, just because you acquire the biggest names available and fully commit to a championship run, that doesn't guarantee success during the playoffs. After all, unless they help their new side lift the cup, most deadline moves ultimately amount to nothing, as many of these acquisitions leave their new side shortly after the postseason, while the team is left with nothing more than a premature playoff exit to remember them by. So be careful who you trade for at the deadline and what you give up to get him. It could come back to bite you sooner than you think. While most teams have their own horror stories of buying at the deadline and falling before the final hurdle, perhaps the greatest example took place nearly 25 years ago, as one team proved that neither a star-studded lineup, a myriad of trades, or even the Great One himself could push them over the top and lead them to the promised land. This is the story of the 1996 St. Louis Blues. Now, in order to explore this cautionary tale, we must first go back to July 17, 1994, when the St. Louis Blues hired Mike Keenan as their new head coach and general manager. Having won the 1994 Stanley Cup with the New York Rangers, and having resigned from the team just a few weeks later due to a conflict with Rangers GM Neil Smith, the Blues handed Keenan a 5-year contract supposedly worth $1 million a season and gave him full control of the team. Though he was known for being a difficult coach to play for, since he was tough on his players and constantly rubbed them the wrong way, and though he had a limited shelf life in each of his prior stops in the league, there was no denying that Keenan's methods were effective, as he had taken all three of his previous sides all the way to the Stanley Cup finals, and had reached the final round 4 times in 9 years. Whether you agree with his tactics or not, that's quite some resume. While Keenan the coach had garnered a questionable reputation, Keenan the general manager made a number of notable trades during his first year with the Blues. These moves included sending Phil Housley to Calgary for Al MacInnis and picking up Guy Carbonneau from Montreal, as well as acquiring several Rangers players who had won the Cup with him the year prior, including Glenn Anderson, Greg Gilbert, Doug Lidster and Esa Tikkanen. Despite these sizable moves, the Blues were unable to get the job done, as their second-place finish in the Central Division and their 28-15-5 record during the lockout-shortened 94-95 season was promptly followed by a 7-game exit in the first round by the recent Cup finalist Vancouver Canucks. Though his debut year had reached an unfortunate conclusion, Keenan had shown that he would do whatever it takes to help his team win a championship, and that he was more than willing to trade any number of players, prospects or draft picks in order to make it happen, even if these deals involved moving top players or fan favourites elsewhere. Now, if you thought Keenan would take a more measured approach during his second season with the Blues, oh boy would you be mistaken. As the 1995 off-season began, Keenan began wheeling and dealing almost immediately, as he made 4 different deals in just 9 days between July 27th and August 8th. Having traded star forward Brendan Shanahan to Hartford in exchange for a young Chris Pronger, high-scoring blue liner Steve Duchesne to Ottawa for a second-round draft pick, and Doug Lidster back to New York for aging enforcer Jay Wells, Keenan would also deal starting goaltender Curtis Joseph to the Edmonton Oilers for a pair of first-round draft picks. Well, that's one way to shake up your organisation. Not only that, Keenan would also sign a number of notable free agents too, including Edmonton forward Shane Coulson, high-scoring star Dale Hawerchuk, as well as Oilers legend Grant Fuhr. If signing a 5-time Stanley Cup champion doesn't signal that you're trying to win now, I don't know what does, folks. After nabbing depth defenseman Dallas Eakins in September, and after trading Guy Carbonneau to the Stars in early October, Keenan had made 11 notable moves during the 1995 off-season alone, including 8 different trades and 3 free agent signings. That's a lot of movement for one team during a single off-season. However, with a new starting goaltender in the crease, a promising young defenseman on the blue line, some extra scoring help and some added toughness to bolster a lineup that already featured Brett Hull and Al McInnes, Keenan and the Blues look poised to take the next step and embark on a deep postseason run. Would that end up happening though? Well, as the puck was dropped and the 95-96 NHL season got underway, the Blues would struggle to find their footing early in the year. Having won 5 of their first 10 games and only 8 of their first 20, St. Louis sat at the 500 mark midway through the season, as they posted an 18-18-5 record during their first 41 games of the year. Seeing that his team still wasn't good enough, Keenan decided to make a few more trades, including sending former acquisition Esa Tikkanen to New Jersey, as well as acquiring Stefan Matteau from the Rangers, another of Keenan's former Cup winners. In fact, between the start of the season in October and the midway point on January 9th, Mike Keenan had completed 4 different trades, meaning he had made a whopping 12 deals since July of that year. Hey, at least he was proactive, right? With the 1996 trade deadline fast approaching, and with the Blues still posting a 500 record into mid-February, Keenan felt that the team needed to make a big splash if they wanted to turn their season around. This led to Keenan making the biggest trade of his entire GM career and a blockbuster deal within the league, as on February 27, 1996, St. Louis traded Craig Johnson, Patrice Tardif, Roman Vopat, a 1997 first-round pick and a 1996 fifth-round pick to the Los Angeles Kings in exchange for forward Wayne Gretzky. So thanks to Keenan's hard work and perseverance to get a deal done, St. Louis had just acquired the Great One. Now that's how you make a statement, folks. Following their acquisition of Gretzky, the Blues would begin to find their rhythm over the next few weeks. Thanks to winning 5 of their 7 games before the trade, and after winning 5 of their 10 games after the deal, St. Louis had posted a 31-28-12 record by late March. Despite this modest improvement though, Keenan still had several trades to make before the March 20th deadline, including moving recent signing Dale Hawerchuk to Philadelphia in exchange for Craig McTavish, as well as acquiring Charlie Huddy from the Buffalo Sabres, both of whom had played alongside a number of the current Blues players during the 1980s as part of the Edmonton Oilers dynasty that won 5 cups in 7 years. In fact, in the 3 weeks after the Gretzky deal, Keenan would make 5 more trades before the 1996 deadline, meaning that he would finish the season having made an astonishing 19 trades that year. Keenan really wanted to win that championship again, eh, folks? Once the deadline had passed and their team was locked in for the rest of the season, St. Louis would struggle mightily down the stretch. Whether it was due to the massive turnover their roster had experienced, disappointing performances from their top players, or just a bad run of form, the Blues would win just a single game during their last 11 contests to finish the year 4th in the Central Division with a 32-24-16 record. Despite this unfortunate end to the year, St. Louis would secure another trip to the playoffs as the 5th seed in the Western Conference and could put their turbulent season behind them by going on a deep postseason run. Though their roster was overflowing with playoff experience, and though they seemed poised to make a legitimate run at the championship, things wouldn't quite go to plan. As the 1996 Stanley Cup playoffs commenced, the Blues would suffer a huge setback soon after their postseason began. Facing the 4th seed Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round, Blues netminder Grant Fuhr, who had played 79 of the team's 82 games that year and had started in a whopping 76 consecutive contests, was taken out of the series in Game 2 after Leafs forward Nick Kypreos tore several ligaments in Fuhr's knee after running into him in his crease. While St. Louis would ultimately overcome this injury and clinch the series in 6 games, they would have to do so with John Casey in net, the team's backup goaltender, who had played in just 9 games during the regular season and had started just 3 of those contests. Having dispatched Toronto during their final games at Maple Leaf Gardens, the Blues would advance to the second round and face the Detroit Red Wings, a team who had defeated the Winnipeg Jets in the first round and had won the 1996 President's Trophy as the best team during the regular season. Despite being forced to rely on their backup goaltender against the first seed in the West, St. Louis wouldn't be an easy out, as they won games 3 and 4 at home to tie the series at 2 apiece, before an overtime win in game 5 would give them a 3-2 series lead. Though they came a single win away from the Western Conference Finals, the juggernaut Red Wings had other plans. After taking Game 6 on the road and tying the series 3-3, an infamous giveaway by Wayne Gretzky during overtime of Game 7 and the subsequent goal by Detroit captain Steve Yzerman would secure a 1-0 victory in the game and the series win for the Red Wings, as Detroit eliminated St. Louis and advanced to the conference finals. And just like that, the Blues season was over. Though they had just suffered an agonising defeat, the Blues had plenty of hope for the future. After all, their roster featured 7 future Hall of Famers and had plenty of talented NHL regulars too. If the team could remain healthy and intact for the foreseeable future, there was nothing stopping them from becoming a perennial cup contender or even a new dynasty in the league. However, both this optimism and the team would quickly fall apart. Having struggled to make his usual dominant impact during his brief tenure with the team, and having clashed with head coach Mike Keenan, deadline acquisition Wayne Gretzky would leave the Blues shortly after the season ended and join the New York Rangers as a free agent, meaning that St. Louis had just lost their biggest acquisition of the year, and their blockbuster deal to acquire him had ultimately amounted to nothing. Speaking of Mike Keenan, the general manager and head coach of the team would also depart from the organisation midway through the following 96-97 season, as he was relieved of his duties on December 19, 1996, following a poor start to the season, as well as his public feud with Blues star Brett Hull. So just half a year after coming 1 win away from the Western Conference Finals, St. Louis had failed to retain the best player the game has ever seen, while also severing ties with their manager just 33 games into the year. While I'm sure that many of the players were very happy to see Keenan go, this wasn't the most ideal outcome, was it? In the years after their second-round exit, the Blues roster would undergo further changes as the team looked to move with the times and continue chasing their first championship. Free agent signing and temporary captain Shane Corson was traded to the Montreal Canadiens just before Keenan's tenure was over. Longtime superstar Brett Hull would leave for the Dallas Stars in 1998, where he would lift his first Stanley Cup shortly after, while goaltender Grant Fuhr would stick around until joining the Calgary Flames in 1999 before retiring at the end of the year. Not only that, young blue liner Chris Pronger would stick around in St. Louis until a trade to Edmonton in 2005, while aging defenseman Al MacInnis would remain with the Blues for the rest of his career until his retirement in 2003. Though the Blues would continue to go without a championship for the next 2 decades, the franchise finally won it all just a few years ago, as the Blues defeated the Boston Bruins in 7 games to clinch the 2019 Stanley Cup. It may have been a long time coming, folks, but that just made the victory all the sweeter. Now, it's worth mentioning that the 95-96 St. Louis Blues are somewhat of an outlier in NHL history, since they made far more moves than most teams make during a single season, and they reshaped large portions of their roster over the course of a lone year. While most teams will make a handful of trades each season, and while many championship rosters win the cup after adding a big piece at the trade deadline, there are just as many teams who make minor moves at the deadline and clinch a championship by trusting the core group of players that they have already built, especially during the salary cap era. So, is it better to make a big splash at the deadline and go all in for the chance at a cup, or is it better to trust your core and let them guide you to a championship instead? To be honest, both options have worked in the past and both are equally as valid, so it's difficult to determine whether one is significantly better than the other. Sure, mortgaging your future for immediate help that you hope can push you over the top presents its fair share of risks, and whether or not the Florida Panthers made the right decisions at the trade deadline certainly remains to be seen. However, you can't fault the team for realising that this is probably their best chance to win and making the most of their limited championship window, especially since they haven't come anywhere near the cup for the last few decades. And besides, if they actually manage to win it all and clinch their first cup in franchise history, how they did it or what they gave up to do so no longer matters, at least in my opinion anyway. And that was a look at the 1996 St. Louis Blues. What do you guys think about this cautionary tale? Do you think that the Blues should have won the championship that year, or do you think that they were doomed to fail from the very beginning? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys. I've been Oddman Rush, and I'll see you again next time.